just in case you want to come back and revisit this. If you need to leave early, if someone's not here, we'll have the recording going. Some logistics for our time include our norms of collaboration. So I'm going to ask you to just take a minute, review these 7 norms of collaboration, and in the chat, put the one that you want to pay attention to today. In the chat, which norm do you want to focus on today? Excellent. Okay, looks good. We've got a bunch of different norms that we're focusing on. I love to see the presuming positive intentions. That's my favorite one for life. But today I'm going to work on paraphrasing, especially as you all share such great insights from this book. I want to make sure I'm paraphrasing you all accurately. So if I sound a little clunky today, just know that's the norm I'm working on. We also have some working agreements for our time together, including coming prepared with the book chapters read, judgment-free zone, time to share, listen, think, and process, keeping to the time and the agenda, active listening, and professionalism. Anything that you want added. We spent a lot of time on this last time, so I'm going to breeze quick through. Okay, wonderful. So our readings for today, we've introduced the Green Book, the Learning First, Tech Second in Practice. So we've read Chapter 2, Building on the Current Frameworks, and Chapter 1, Debunking Myths with Research. So I'm going to open this up to your discussion. What are important points from either chapter that you want to talk about with the group today? Anything that stood out, any questions you have, any applications to your work, any aha moments?
I can go if no one else is going.
Go for it, Kim.
I mean, I don't really like going, but somebody's gotta, No, I'm just kidding. I wanted to give a shout out to Julia and Connie because they're doing a workshop, Teach the Teacher, which I think is really helpful for the engagement piece, especially. Well, all of it, but I know in the Green Book for the section on engagement, like making, let me find the page I was on. Well, I can talk about it and then I can go back and find it. Like having students actually come up with something to teach you about it, like that is a really good way to engage them in a meaningful way. And they're able to share things that I know for me, I did all about me for the students, and then like they were able to share where they would like to travel in the world and came up with a video for about that, and they taught the other students in the classroom like all about where they would want to go, why they want to go there, what they would do there, and like even finding the meaningful engagement piece, because a lot of times even if the computer is on their desk, like it was said earlier, or any kind of technology, I know like in our group I was talking about, even having a phone out, it said like it can be distracting to the kids or an adult because you're waiting for that text message or snow day alert or anything like that. Like if you're waiting for something like that, you're not fully engaged. So I thought the Green Book, the chapter about engagement and then enhancement and extension was really important for talking about that piece of it.
So to paraphrase you, Kim, you stressed the importance of engagement and gave a nice shout out to Julia and Connie that their session further furthered the goal of engaging students in the work.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the one myth, and then debunked myth. Unless, Erin, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to what Kim was saying about like multitasking and distraction. Having technology, even having a computer in front of them, or even having a phone like on your desk, and how distracting that could be. And it so is, you know, I try to always like teach first and then say, okay, now you can get out your computer, because the second they open their computer, like they're just, you lost half of them immediately. So I'm always making sure they understand what we're doing ahead of time before they can even like touch their computer.
I know that I found it interesting was the one-on-one devices, like the one-on-one access section of the myths. Because like I would have thought like one-on-one is like pretty good. And I know that our district in particular, we'd have to get way too many, we don't have the money to get as many devices as we would need to have each teacher have their own set of Chromebooks. And then we're also limited in the time frame of like them having to like grab the Chromebook, log in between classes, especially at the middle school level, with like the less than 40 minutes to try to do that, get them in, get them on, and get them where they need to go if they have their one-on-one device. And so I was like reading through, and it was kind of interesting to see like, hey, like the numbers don't necessarily correlate to having one-on-one devices. And so I was like thinking of all the reasons why I feel like we have one-on-one devices. And so it kind of was bringing up questions for me. I don't know about you guys.
You had your hand up, Connie. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just making sure I didn't want to interrupt anybody. I think that what keeps coming back to me, and the big glaring thing, is learning goals first. So a framework that considers the learning goal and how technology tools are adding value to that learning goal. And it's kind of been like a smack in the forehead that I needed. Like, what is my learning goal, and why are the Chromebooks out all day long? That's not necessary. So I guess more intentional use of platforms and Chromebooks, because I'll be honest, when they come in the morning and get on Reflex, I'm not really monitoring that. I'm doing attendance and lunch count, and the kids that got it, and the kids that are just like, I'm just doing this because I have to. So that's not intentional.
And to kind of go off you, Connie, too, I was also kind of like, a little bit like smack in the face of, I have a student who lost the privilege of a Chromebook, and how that has completely shifted of, okay, but guess what? The learning is target and objective is still the same for that student. But right, so we had to remove this technology platform. So, but ultimately, I'm like, but we're still doing that same objective. They're still going to research an animal, and they're just not going to use a Pebble Go, an online source, to find their information. We're going to go down to the library and we're going to find books together. But ultimately, like, it kind of like was, oh, wow, right? Like I had to think of it differently, like on the fly, and I have to plan something alternative. However, it wasn't as hard as I thought it would have been, because I knew my objectives were still geared towards ELA and science. And so then I was like, okay, like I'm good, right? Like there was a little bit of a panic for me of like, oh boy, I gotta print things. But I was like, no, he still is meeting that same like expectation and objective, just getting there in a different way. So like we talk about, like, we're all going to the same vacation, but how we get there on whatever that vehicle of transportation, walking, taking a bus, flying, whatever, swimming, like either way, we're gonna end there. So that was like just a good like perspective for me to reflect, and that was one area in my like day where I felt confident that I thought of that objective first rather than the technology. But always can be real. I know I'm in the same boat as you, Connie, right? Typing club in the morning, like it's a need, but like how effective is it, right? So then I have to think about that. So it's good to like pose that question.
Thanks, Kim, too, for the shout out. That was nice.
I said thank you, but you didn't hear me because I was muted. But I mean it though, like that was true engagement. I mean, they couldn't spell a lot of the words, which I had to say engaged too, you know, but like it was cool to have them share what they did learn, and they truly were engaged.
So it sounds like one of the myths that really stood out to people, two myths I'm hearing that stood out to people were that one-on-one devices are a silver bullet. We know that they're not. And also the myth of quantity or quality over quantity of use. That came up a bunch. How might those myths and then the research that debunks it, how might that change your practice as a tech mentor? I've heard a lot about in the classroom. Are you making any connections to your practice providing PD for folks? Considering those two myths specifically, the one-on-one and the I always have this backwards, quality over quantity.
So one of the things that I highlighted, and it goes actually back to what they were talking about with engagement and all of that, and that is in order for us to effectively use technology in our curriculum and have it embedded in our curriculum to meet the learning goals, to meet the standards, to not just use AI generated stuff, all of those things, we ourselves have to be absolutely familiar with the different educational platforms we're using. Just because you're using Gimkit because the kids like it, okay, but why? Why are you specifically using Gimkit? Is it because you can pick the questions? Is it because you can add pictures? Is it because it's timed? Is it because you're using it for a brain break? Is it because the students can then go and play it later? Versus something like building a comic book versus using Padlet versus or Canva or Jamboard or you know, all of those other things that we can do. If one of the things I'm finding as teachers, they want to use it and they understand, and most of the teachers I find in my building anyway, I'm going to give them props. They understand that one-to-one is not a magic bullet. They understand that it is not engagement by any stretch of the means. And most of them actually won't use that if they don't feel they have time to watch Go Guardian to make sure that the students are actively engaged in what they're doing. But the other thing is they're saying to me, oh yeah, well, I would love to, but I don't know how and where and what. And so once again, it goes back to the idea of if our district owns, what is it, like 167 different educational platforms or something outrageous number like that. If they don't even know what's out there and what the learning targets are, how can we expect them to use quality over quantity? And so that was one of the huge things I kept coming back to, especially in the Green Book for this first chapter.
That leads me to I find it really, really interesting to learn about the brain and how it is how we're wired. So the part, it's like page 3, it's the beginning. Anytime they talk about dopamine and anytime they talk about instant gratification. So it's 2023 and certain things make us feel good. So we want to feel good all the time. So when you gave the shout out, something as simple as meaningful shares. I became a teacher and I always think to myself, would Stacy as a 7-year-old want to do this? Would Stacy as a 7-year-old freaking go home and tell her parents this cool thing she did? So I'm always thinking about, okay, am I doing a thing or am I present in a participant in the thing? So that's where I always come back to. If I'm intentional, then I will never have to regret doing typing club in the morning or whatever you guys do for your routines. There is a reason you do it. And that's what I want to get across to other teachers. What are you doing because it's awesome? Not what are you doing because teaching is really freaking hard. And I can't sit down enough. So that's where I'm at.
I know, I can speak to, Connie and I, the PD that we have been giving the last couple of weeks, and right, the first thing, and I have to also give Liz a shout out too for some coaching as well. Right, we started our PD with not what platform are you going to use to do this? It was, what is your objective? What is your content that you want to get across? Is it relationship building and letting them just teach you anything about themselves? Or is it, no, I have a research unit anyways and writing workshop, and that's where I'm going. So it forced those people, whether, you know, and maybe we have our final session where we reflect, and Connie, maybe we want to go back and we want to pull the curtain away, right? And like pull the curtain to the side and say, we decided to do it this way so that you thought of that objective, that learning first, and then technology second. And then to back off of what like Tracy said too, or piggyback off what she said, like, and then we went through, here are the platforms available to you. Here are some research, you know, databases that are available through BOCES or your library. So like, yes, like it is important as tech mentors to be showing them platforms and access to things, but why? Like, and it was truly like one of the first PDs that I've thought of learning first. So like huge credit to like Liz and Connie for like pushing me outside of my comfort zone, right? Like, not that any of the other PDs that I've done before have been hurtful, but like just a different type. So that was a celebration, and I have to give a shout out as well, because I am learning myself as a you know, PD holder.
Well, thanks for the shout out, Julia. And a quick plug, if you are interested in coaching, you can sign up for coaching with your tech coach. So do it. It's great. And you get your PD hours. Okay, so there, I'm done. Katrin, you had your hand up.
Liz, you can pay me after.
No.
Totally kidding, guys.
So like getting to like that app quality myth,
Downloading bus number 5.
I was thinking about like, hey, we're trying to vet all these platforms with EdLaw 2D. Are we thinking about how good they are, and should we not have them be an available platform anymore? Which ones are like, I feel like that might have been a good place to start when we were trying to get all these contracts signed. Is this one that we really want to keep, or is this one that we just don't want to worry about? And I was curious if that was a conversation that occurred, because this is my first year as like a tech mentor. So
For some historical background, Katrin, this is my 3rd year at Binghamton, and in that time, I've had 4 different people in the role of tech director. So I think with all of the turnover, it was just SOS, we need to get stuff signed so we're not breaking the law. Now that we have Carrie and Alex in place, we can start being more intentional about what we're purchasing and why. And to recap on what everyone's been sharing, it sounds like teachers are ready for that conversation. It sounds like teachers are moving past the throw a platform at it. They're ready for the why, is what I'm hearing. For those of you who haven't chimed in, are you seeing the same thing in your buildings and your sessions? Are people ready for the next step in tech integration? What do you think?
I think they are. I think it's just they're still quite unsure about what, again, like Tracy said, what programs to use and how to use them appropriately with intention, and not just as you said, a silver bullet.
I've had relatively few people sign up for my school for workshops. It's not funny, but like I used to have, I mean, they fill up for things, but then I can't seem to get interest. And Erin works with me too, but like at our school, we can't seem to get the interest in. So it's hard to say. I mean, I know like I know when I met with Liz earlier in the year for coaching too with Erin, like one of the things, like using the Chromebook correctly, so a lot of them aren't, and I know like in the chapter that highlighted it too, but like that would be a possible workshop I'd be interested in doing. But I don't know.
I think a lot of teachers, I think some of them want to, have quality tech integration. But I think they're just struggling so much with time as well. That's why I think it's really important when we're training staff on technology, whatever it is, an app or whatever, to really give them time to explore the platform and to have time to plan, planning a lesson with their students, asking questions, trying things out. Because, you can learn about every single app and website out there, but if you don't really have the time to integrate it into your curriculum in a meaningful way, then it's just kind of a waste in the long run. So I think that's an important part to remember, that teachers just need that time to do it.
Mhm.
One of the types of PD that Dan and I have been trying to push for, and we actually finally just got approval from Carrie, is that we're actually going to be doing a series, and it's going to be like ELA writing or reading, and we're going to present like 2 or 3 platforms asynchronously. They're going to work on it, bring back an idea to share out with everybody. Then in 2 weeks, we're going to do, okay, math, word problems. What platforms do we have available if you need computational skills, critical thinking skills, all of those? And again, just pick 2 or 3. They're going to go work, bring ideas back to the group. And then we're going to do, science, like A plus B doesn't always have to equal C, which is tough for kids in science, like those types of things. And so, that's definitely something I think that is hopefully will be helpful, because I know, for, like I said before, with me, knowing I have those platforms available to me, I can then start to make them effective, useful, important, but without knowing them. And then we're not overwhelming them. It's like 2 or 3, they're trying it, they're bringing back an idea. And it's also, I know for me personally, when I go to PD, if they never check back in on me, I forget about it. And as much as I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this in my classroom, you get caught up in everything else. Like last month, we had 8 different schedules in the month of November in the days. So yeah, 8, it was like 2 a week. And I forgot about something I wanted to do from the PD. So, that asynchronous, I think, hopefully will help. So we're going to see how this goes, this like series of presenting.
That's
That's
exciting.
amazing. That's amazing that you're doing that and preparing that for people that probably just need like a little bit of hand holding and then attack it on your own. And I've heard like a lot of times that someone will say, well, if it was made for me, of course I'd do it with the kids. So that's kind of like you're getting towards that. And I just shout out, you're cool. Get on the news.
And I think so powerful too, Tracy, like letting them have time too. It's time. And unfortunately, it's always the problem. We don't have enough time. But when you're around your peers and there's this like focus and you get stuff done, you're way more productive. And then when you have time to talk with peers and to problem solve and right, and then also like mine was my lesson flopped, but then you hear someone over here that say, well, this was really successful, then it gives you some hope. So like we're building morale. Like there's just so much to be said about that structure, and it's great. Yeah, that's awesome. I can't wait to hear how it goes.
I know, me too, but we finally got it approved. We got like the asynchronous part. The only thing, if anybody else wants to do this, like for an elementary level or whatever, is she said the only thing was your asynchronous time can't outweigh the instruction time. So the way we're kind of getting around that is we're going to give them asynchronous, but then we're also going to give them work sessions. So it's going to be like a 3-hour for each. And so I know like my self-contained teachers, they're going to be signing up for English and math, both of those 3 hours. And so they'll have roughly 8 hours of their time that are available to them to take tech, which is really kind of cool. And it'll overlap. So like we'll present on one, then they'll have asynchronous time, but in that time we'll present on another one, and then they'll have asynchronous, so they can hit a couple if they want to. That's what we're planning.
I wonder if some of the buy-in from teachers getting involved, and Kim, what you said about some of the trainings and stuff is if they start to see that the focus is first on the learning, on the goals, on that kind of stuff, and teachers have a better idea that like I'm not just coming to learn a platform, I'm coming to make my learning better, to help my students more, to teach this topic better. I think that's been missing from so long from the technology. It's just been thrown at teachers just over and over and over again, that it's that, you know, kind of getting back to your roots a little bit might be a draw for. It's a slow process, but you know, hopefully that will help though.
I think when you're like teaching the workshops too, like virtually, I don't know, I just like have a hard time with the cameras off, because I don't know if they're there or not. And it's hard to really assess if they're getting what you're teaching. You know, like if their camera is off. And I know like I was one of the remote teachers during COVID, and none of my students knew how to turn off the camera. They were first grade, thank God. But like, so like, I know like a lot of problems are, like seeing kids, like, are they actually engaged? Same thing with adults, you know, like, am I engaging the adults? Like if they're not even there when I'm saying, you know, are there any questions? Cause I know people have questions. Like it shows me like maybe I'm not engaging as a presenter if, I don't know, that's my own issue, but
I know, and like, again, I feel like I'm just maybe like getting paid for the PLIC department, but like, I think Liz and the rest of the PLIC team, that like how they model also like our tech meetings, like I took like how, okay, you are going to share something when you come back. Like that is that we're tight on that. So it's not like, are there any questions? It's, I want you to write one question, or like, and you can't really just have like one specific, you know, are there any questions, or type your question, have two things that they can choose from, or a list of three and they pick one. And then somehow, some way you're seeing it in the chat. The chat is always more comfortable for everyone. We know that. And so like, that's a really great strategy that Connie, again, and I have been using in this whole platform, because we knew planning this whole thing, it needed to be virtual. Teachers don't sign up for in-person things. The attendance rates are down. So we're like, okay, it has to be Google Meet, but this is really hard. We want them to have conversations. How are we going to make sure they're mostly on task? And there's no perfect scenario, right? You're always going to have teachers that are off task, but that whole idea of like, by the way, you're coming back and you're going to share this, like that has helped at least a little bit in regards to like that engagement and like accountability. Like they're just like our students. I can be just as guilty. Like if I don't have a have to in the chat, I'm a little bit more spacey, where if there's a have to, I know that I gotta be a little bit more on. So adult learners are so similar to kids, but and myself included, like I'm right in that boat, and no one's perfect, but
oh,
that
me
was-
too. I have two,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It's hard, like as a
It
presenter,
is. It's very hard to read the
especially
room.
especially
Mhm.
when you only have like two cameras on, and one of them's your sister, you know. Of course, then
I like the idea of using the days that our whole district, you know, what are they called? Superintendent's conference days. Like how many good conversations could we have if we split that up and gear that towards like getting us all on the same page, sort of. I remember it was about grading and I was so infuriated, like, so whoever can talk to the people.
Well, I'll keep offering for you, Stacy. But the conversation that we're having reminded me of one of the engagement realities. That students of all ages need breaks from technology to recharge their brains and stay engaged in a learning task. And I love, Julia, that you said that applies to our adult learners too. It absolutely does. So I'm curious what strategies you all have used to build in those breaks, either for your students or for your adult learners. How do you intentionally give brains breaks from technology?
I might
just
be
set the
doing
ti-
it backwards, but I use tech to give them breaks from sitting. Yeah, like stuff like that. Just like as a little example, I use Go Noodle like a lot. Dance parties, cat parties. If you know it, you know it.
I set the timer a lot so time doesn't get away from me because it can slip away. And then usually the break is it varies, but like Go Noodle or some kind of stretching exercise or something to get the blood flowing. Go get a drink.
Thank you in the in the chat, Katrin. Think, pair, share, breakout groups.
One of the
I
things
know. Oh, go ahead.
and sorry, and my they're starting to love it and it teaches them, that these Chromebooks are not theirs. And that is, so for example, if we are, say we're doing a virtual lab and it is brain heavy, they really, brain-based research shows you have about 7 to 9 minutes of true engagement at a screen. And then that's about it. So at that point, what I do is I lock all their Chromebooks. And again, I set the timer. So they see it up on the board. The Chromebooks will be locked. They then have to get up and go to somebody else's Chromebook and find out where they left off. And then I'll unlock them and they have to make comments on somebody else's on paper, or like I give them whiteboards on their desks. So, but they have to do that all standing, and they have about 3 minutes, and then they lock their Chromebooks back up. So they can't really do an awful lot. And then they go back to their Chromebook. So it does peer review. It gets them out of moving. They struggled with it at first, letting somebody else come on to their Chromebook that's not their partner.
If every power hour room will send 2 students.
But now they look forward to it. They know it's counting down. So
I think that leverages a lot of the stuff from the first chapter. Maybe we talk about co-use of devices and that kind of stuff. That you can have collaboration and use technology at the same time. And whether it's like that or virtually on here, using some sort of interactive whiteboards, something like that, where you have people in the same space where they don't necessarily have to pop on their cameras and talk, but you can still keep track of what they're saying by whether or not they're did they comment on somebody else's idea? Did they, bring their own idea to the table, all that kind of stuff. So you can have some of that accountability outside of just, face-to-face communication.
I know last week we did a workshop on Canva for one of the activities. Like I made this game right when COVID started. And Canva wasn't free, but you had to and some of the pictures weren't that great, but nobody was paying attention. Sorry, they might have been they were paying attention. I didn't think they were paying attention, but the game, people were turning their cameras on like you wouldn't believe, and right into the chat. I was like, oh man. I was like, out of nowhere. So came out of nowhere, and so I think having a little game or something, even midway through like that, if you are doing virtual things.
Yeah, I think anytime you add a little competition, it really wakes everybody up and gets them involved.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Okay, so with our last 15 minutes, the time flies by, doesn't it? I want to get to just one of the activities I had planned for y'all. I love that we can come to these book clubs and just have such great conversations. I overplan because I'm an overplanner, but I appreciate all of the great conversations we're having. So we're going to do just a final little share out in a breakout room. It'll actually take most of the time we have left. But what I'm going to ask you to do is take a moment to review the myths and realities, either in your book or at the end of the slides. I have them all. all of the realities. So if you don't have your book on you, you can access this from Google Classroom. I'm going to give you a minute or two to pick out which one was most surprising to you or which one resonated with you the most. And we're going to share in breakout rooms. So go ahead and take a minute or two. Which one was most surprising? Which one resonated with you? And we're just going to do a quick share out to wrap up our time together.
Thank you for putting all of them on slides. Because I was thinking I should do that to get the information to the people, and you did it.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Okay, folks, breakout rooms are going to open up. They're going to have about 3 people per room. They're going to stay open for 8 minutes, and then we'll come back together to close our time. So go ahead, share around what resonated with you or what was most surprising. if you're watching this, behind the scenes footage of what we do when you're chatting in breakout rooms. Welcome back. Welcome back. Hey, welcome back, everyone. So real quick, before I send you on your way, I'm just going to do a final check-in in the chat. Considering the myths and realities, what is your first next step? So go ahead in the chat, first next step. It could be something you're going to start doing, something you're going to stop doing. It could be more reading. It could be something as a tech mentor, as a teacher. I don't care. Put it in the chat. What's your first next step? Quality over quantity. I love it, Jess. Quality resources for teachers. Awesome. Modeling in PDs. I love to see that. Students focusing on one task at a time. Oh, does the tech serve the learning of at-risk students? That was my most surprising myth and reality. Engagement for workshops. Awesome, Stacy. Okay, everyone. The multitasking. Oh, don't I wish we could multitask? Awesome. Okay, everyone. That brings us to just about time. Our next meeting is going to be January 22nd, and it's all things engagement. So Blue Book Chapter 4 and Green Book Chapter 2. Our whole conversation will be on engaging learners. So thank you all so much for spending the afternoon with us. Have a great break, a great holiday if I don't see you again. And I appreciate you all. So thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks, Liz.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank
You
you
too.
all.
Happy holiday.
Happy holidays, Stacy.
Thanks, Liz. Have a good break and a good holiday.
Thanks, Jess. You too. Tom, I saw your question about Google Classroom for the other group.
Yeah.
If you're gonna share resources with them, I would go
Yeah,
for it.
I wasn't sure. Yeah, I wasn't sure if we wanted to, so if we do it similar to the way that you're doing, if this was kind of the guide for how we'll do it with them, I mean, it's obviously a little
Yeah.
bit different because it's shorter and in person, but
Mhm.
like at least having some place where they can have the slides in front of them all the time. And
Yeah,
if we're gonna try to use that Padlet throughout, and it's there, it's just a place for them to have it. So
yeah,
I could create one or whatever, add you guys as instructors, and then have that ready for Friday. Just have them log in there
Yeah.
real quick. I'm assuming they all have Google accounts, so they all will be able to get into a classroom, and
they should be.
whether they know how to do it or not is another story, but
Right, that's another story.
or at all familiar with it, but
Yeah,
we'll figure it out. So, all right. So I'll set that up
Okay.
tomorrow. I'm hanging out with Dan, and we're going to make sure we're all settled for Friday before the rest
Perfect.
of you all disappear for
head to
a couple
Albany.
days. So
Yep.
yeah, enjoy
Okay,
it.
sounds good. Thanks,
right.
Tom.
Yep.
Talk
Bye-bye.
soon.